And we bow and we bend from the beginning of the world till the never end. O Devo Shalom Aleinu, O Devo Shalom Aleinu, Devo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Welcome. In our tradition, before one studies Torah, there's a blessing for it. Again, as we talked about before, to grab the moment. So I'll introduce you to that blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We are in awe and wonder before and within the oneness of all that creates commandments for us, one of which is to, or from which we glean our commandments, might be even better. One of which is to involve ourselves, busy ourselves with the study of Torah. Now, Torah means teaching. That's all it means. So in that regard, Torah is everywhere, and Torah is in everything. So here we go. I'm going to try and share. Somehow, my PowerPoint wasn't quite working. And so I got onto a thing called PowerPoint for the web. So here it is, but I can't seem to make a slideshow out of it for you. It's not quite letting me do that. See if no, that's not working. Okay, so we'll just do it from here and I'll move things along. Let's see if there's a way. On your screens, one of the things you might do is, let's see. Max, have you ever seen this before? This PowerPoint for the web? Because I can't.
Oh, I'm not familiar with it, but what if you went under view there?
That might be it.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
From beginning. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Yes.
Max, what would we do without you? All right. So this is something that a colleague of mine, a senior colleague of mine, Sidney Greenberg, wrote, and I put it into our prayer book for the High Holy Days, which later, well, I could tell you now, is called the Machzor. So the one for the rest of the year is called the Sidur. This one is from the Machzor. And I put this reading in because I think it really describes so well our attitude about this day or this season. Because notice he says at this season of the year, we're really talking about quite a long season, something approaching a month and a half. So here we go. At this season of the year, our ancestors always wished one another a Shana Tova, a good year. We usually wish each other a happy new year. They emphasized the thought that life's central quest was for goodness, for uprightness. With us, the accent falls on the pursuit of pleasure. Even the way we refer to these days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur reveals a decisive difference in attitude. We close our shops or absent ourselves from our businesses on account of the Jewish holidays. To them, they were Jewish holy days, days of awe and trepidation. There's a world of difference between a holiday and a holy day. On holidays, we run away from duties. On holy days, we face up to them. On holidays, we seek to let ourselves go. On holy days, we try to bring ourselves under control. On holidays, we try to empty our minds. On holy days, we attempt to replenish our spirits. On holidays, we reach out for the things we want. On holy days, we reach up for the things we need. Holidays bring a change of scene. Holy days bring a change of heart. So I hope you like that. I never, ever, ever get tired of reading it. And it really does set the scene for this incredible time of the year what I often tell people who want to see it from another perspective is that if we had anything as for us, these days are as holy as, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are as holy as Christmas and Easter for us. Although they're much different in their content, and it's not as if we wait all year long to look at ourselves this way, to do this self-inspection this way, and to see what we've done right and what we've done wrong, or better yet, what we could have done better. But this is really the pinnacle of what happens. Okay, let's see if I can do the next one. Okay. Because of that reading, now you'll understand that the real way to refer to these days is the high holy days, not the high holidays. Some people will still refer to them as the holidays, but I've tried to teach my congregation for nearly 30 years that they shouldn't do that. So you should know that these are the high holy days. There are other names as well. There's Yamim Noraim, the days of awe or awesome days. As he said, days of awe and trepidation. Trepidation because we know how fragile we are. Trepidation because we know how complex this world is and how hard it is to grasp that at every moment, and also how to be part of something larger at all moments of the day and all moments of the year. Also called a Yom Tov. Now, that means a good day or Yontif, but it's difficult to describe, to reconcile that with this notion of it being days of awe, days of trepidation. What a Yom Tov means is that it's a certain rank, really, with Jewish holy days, with Jewish commemorations. This is the highest rank, what we call a Yom Tov, a Yontif. Yontif, that's at the bottom, that is the Yiddish pronunciation of it. And you'll notice, I told you before that what Yiddish does is it takes Hebrew and it puts it in a vice and squeezes it. So you can see that in Yiddish, Yom Tov, which is two words, actually comes out as one word, Yontif. And it will often be, someone will often say good Yontif, as if Yontif is the name of the entity, but it actually means good day. So what we're trying to do is elevate this day even beyond any of the other, certainly any of the other holy days that we commemorate, because you can't say that you exactly celebrate Rosh Hashanah. It's more serious than that. It really is. So, go on. There's another word, another epithet for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. Again, the intensity of this day, as if there were a judge and judgment happening on this day, or in this season, or beginning on Rosh Hashanah and ending on Yom Kippur. It's not, that's certainly not my theology, but it certainly puts one in one's place, and recognizes that we're not the best judges of ourselves. Elul is the name of the month, the Hebrew month that we're in now. It is described as the last month of the year, but it's not. It's actually the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar. You might guess, well, if it's the 6th month, and here it is, August, September, Rosh Hashanah will begin on September 18th in the evening, Shabbat evening, actually, which is beautiful to wed the two of them. But excuse me, if Elul is the 6th month of the year, then if we go back 6 months to the first month of the Hebrew year. What holiday or holy day do you think is celebrated then at the very beginning of the year in the first month? And it is Passover, as you might have guessed, because Passover is, the beginning of our lives as a people. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are really our only spiritual, emotional, theological holy days. Everything else is based in our history. These are not historically based at all, although they are based in the calendar in terms of the ending of the summer harvest, the beginning of the fall harvest in Israel, of course. I spelled this wrong. There should be an L here. I can't correct that now. Slichot, right? But you can see it here. Slichot is a ceremony, a service that takes place on the Saturday night just preceding the High Holy Days. However, if the High Holy Days would be within a day or two of that Saturday night, we actually move it back so that there's a breathing time between Slichot and the beginning of the High Holy Days themselves. So for Slichot, what we do is we actually introduce all the thematics of the High Holy Days, many of the prayers and the melodies that we use for High Holy Days come into the mix. One of the things that has always been beautiful for me is that whereas we'll have some of the same prayers that we say all year long that are part of a High Holy Day service, the melodies will be different to indicate to to try and get into you emotionally, almost tactically, that the weight of this occasion is very, very heavy. And you notice that the word slicha means actually, by the way, this is the singular of this. Sometimes Hebrew words will have an ot at the end, which means that in their original form, they are feminine. It can end like ha, usually with an ah sound at the end. And then it will be plural with ot. If it's not feminine, it will be im at the end. Words in Hebrew, like Romance languages, are feminine and masculine. I'm sorry is what this means. And so this is a series of apologies that really begins on, that was very funny. When I said slicha, or I'm sorry. Oh, that's what it was. I said, I'm sorry, and Siri thought I was talking to her. That's funny. That's one for the books. Okay. Okay, Siri. We don't have to worry about it. Now, I purposely put this little person on this long road here for you because that's how I want you to picture kind of the motion, the action of that's underneath this holy day. Teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I don't even know if you see that. You probably don't. Okay, so I'm going to go back the other way. How do I go backwards? I don't know. Back. No one's help. Oh, thanks. Was that you, Max? I'm sure it was. Max is my angel from heaven. Okay, thank you. And let's go back to view and let's, from the, no, I don't want from the beginning. All right, but I can do that real quickly. Okay, whoops. Did it again, Max. Sorry. Stop share. Share. Okay. Max, can you get me back to this picture from before? This is not, somehow, this is not working.
How did you go forward? Could you go with a back arrow maybe?
Oh, I got it. I did it. Yes, that was it. Okay, thanks. So if you notice this person on the road, the vision is that on Rosh Hashanah, you know that many times you get off the road and you kind of lose your way out into these wonderful meadows over here, so far away that you can't even see the road. And you think that you're doing fine until you recognize that you're really lost. And so turning is the first part of the process. In other words, noting that you're wrong, noting that you're in the wrong place, noting that you made a wrong turn, that somehow you got off the path that you wanted to be on. And the next step is prayer or meditation, that you need to psychoanalyze yourself as much as one is capable of doing that, and say, why did I do that? Why am I here, not where I want to be or even need to be? Because if you just turn and say, okay, I'm going back, without understanding why you got off track, then the possibility of you doing it again, of course, is much greater. And finally, how do we rectify what happened with tzedakah, which is a word we've had before, which is the closest word that we have for charity, but it really means justice. So we need to find places where there's justice missing in the world and do something that will equalize it somehow, that will get justice there. Of course, this is all we've been talking about since the high-profile deaths of several African-American men and women, only because they were as gruesome and as unjust as they were. So, how do we create acts of justice that will countermand our society's tendency to engage in these things and say, oh, well, isn't it terrible? There's nothing I can do. I'm impotent. I have no power. What this process of turning and prayer and acts of justice does, or these components do, is they empower us through this process. These, according to the liturgy, alleviate the final decree, as it were, of justice. Okay, Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. And again, I mentioned, Rosh is the word for head, by the way. Ha means the, Shana is year. So the head of the year, obviously it's not really the head of the year, but it's the head of our personal year. Although crucial to your understanding of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, during the service, when we apologize for things, we always do it in the plural. We never, ever do it in the singular. It's part of the way in which we take responsibility for everybody's action. The great rabbi, or one of the great rabbis of the 20th century, Abraham Joshua Heschel, said it this way: in a free society, some are guilty, all are responsible. And that really is acted out on Rosh Hashanah when you have this chorus of everybody in the congregation saying, we did this and we did that, we did this and we did that. There's a whole list and litany of them, robbing from people who, not purposefully, but robbing possibilities from them, robbing opportunities from them, et cetera, being cruel to other people with language, being cruel to other people with our bodies, all kinds of things, lists and lists and lists of all of these things, but we all say them all together, whether or not we are personally guilty of them or not. In a free society, some are guilty, all are responsible. L'shana tova tekatevu is our greeting for one another. You remember that the greeting for Shabbat is Shabbat Shalom. This is a little more complex. May you be inscribed for a good year. Huh? Inscribed for a good year in what? Look at the bottom, the Sefer HaChaim, the book of life. So we ask that people be both inscribed for a good year and sealed with a good seal. Okay? May everything be finished with a good seal for you for a good year. Yeah. That is again really this image that you could take it literally. Some people do, that there's a Sefer Chaim, that there is. I'm going to turn my phone off. That there is a book of life that somehow God has in God's lap and inscribes in it the fate of everybody in the coming year. A little ominous. Most of us as Reform Jews, as more of a liberal perspective, progressive perspective, we would probably say that those of us that we have to inscribe ourselves. That we have to do the writing and we have to do the sealing of this book. And so it's not a passive thing. It should be an active thing. Chet is an archery term. It's the closest word that we have for sin. Another very common word is avirah, but it also is a wrongdoing. Not exactly a sin in the classic sense. And not being pejorative in any way. I'm just like pointing out a difference, and I think it's a huge difference between Christianity and Judaism in terms of the word that we use, although I may be up for a surprise later, and Pastor Shofar might tell me something like he did about communion and the way that the Lutheran Church looks at it. So I'm hoping for a big surprise. But in the meantime, let's or does something that is wrong. The assumption in Judaism, okay, I hope my connection is better. The assumption in Judaism is that you tried to hit the mark and you didn't. You tried to do the right thing and ended up doing the wrong thing. It could have been for all kinds of reasons. You were distracted. You didn't prioritize well. You didn't have an opportunity to really think things out. Whatever it was, you missed the mark. You missed the bullseye. So this is the Jewish version of innocent, right? You're innocent until you're proven guilty, right? We assume innocence. We don't assume that someone purposely went out to do something wrong. That's why I say it's our closest word or concept to sin. Okay. Which, of course, is a lot of what we talk about on the High Holy Days. Listen, we say, Al chet shechatanu, for the sin that we did consciously or subconsciously, for the sin that we did in private or in public, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not a sin, it's chet, it's a missing of the mark, okay? A missing of the mark. Unatana tokef. Unatana tokef is this massive prayer. Those of you who are, and it's those of you who are fans of Leonard Cohen may know a song that he wrote that, I mean, I can't even hope to get my voice as low as his. But when he sang "Who by fire and who by water," right? Um, and that Leonard Cohen came from a Jewish background, and one of the things that he remembered that he turned into this amazing song, although it really, he's got an artist's take on it, so it really gets molded and nuanced in different ways. But this is one of the key prayers that we have for us. Um, uh, like we talked about just a few seconds ago, in this book of life that we are in which our fate is supposedly written down. It is said who will die by fire, who will die by water, who will die by falling, who will die by sickness, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things are supposedly written down. So I wanted to give you a little bit of, well, let me first say that there's a great deal of text that precedes this part that I'm about to show you, but this is the core of the prayer called Unatana Tokef. Okay. On Rosh Hashanah, it is inscribed, and on Yom Kippur, it is sealed. So here's this book of life, right? It's written, and the book closes really slowly between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And if we can climb in there and get a chance to rewrite something if we're not too late. How many shall pass away, and how many shall be born? Who shall live, and who shall die? Who in good time, and who by an untimely death? Who by water, and who by fire? Who by sword, and who by wild beast? Who by famine, and who by thirst? Who by earthquake, and who by plague? Who by strangulation, and who by lapidation? Who shall have rest, and who wander? Who shall be at peace, and who pursued? Who shall be serene, and who tormented? Who shall become impoverished, and who wealthy? Who shall be debased, and who exalted? But repentance, teshuvah, prayer, tefillah, and righteousness, tzedakah, avert the severity of the decree. So you will be judged more lightly if you engage in this process that we talked about before. I talked about it in a much more psychodynamic way, not so much as a magic pill, that will somehow make God look at you better in some way. And again, that's the duality picture of God outside of us rather than us being inside of God, trying to figure out what it means to be there. If we are outside of God, we're waiting for God to make all these decisions, and we try and forestall it or actually neutralize it through tefillah, tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, turning around, recognizing we were wrong, praying or meditating about it, and then doing an act of righteousness and saying, look how good I am. I think a better approach is to take responsibility for what we did wrong. Yes, definitely turn from the place we didn't want to be. Stop and pray, meditate, engage with oneself and try to understand what happened that took us to that place. And then to indicate to ourselves that we want to be a different person and perhaps a better person by engaging in an act of righteousness that may have nothing to do with what we did wrong. Because there are some things in the world that can't be undone. The rabbis considered slander like murder as an example. And the example that is often given is a Hasidic story and you may know this story from another context, of a man who had slandered someone and their reputation was completely destroyed. And this man felt so remorseful and so horrible of what he had done. And he went to the rabbi and he said to the rabbi, he said, Rabbi, I have done the most horrible thing. And now, someone's name is destroyed. I need to repent. I need to do something. I need to get it right. And the rabbi said, I can't help you. He said, but you're the rabbi. You have to help me. You have to think of something. Or I said, okay, go home and bring me a feather pillow and a knife. So the man goes home and brings back a feather pillow and a knife. And the rabbi takes the knife and the feather pillow and cuts open the pillow, shakes the feathers everywhere, and happened to be a somewhat breezy day, and the feathers go everywhere. And now the rabbi says, now go pick up all the feathers. And the man said, that's impossible. I can't get every single one. And the rabbi said, that's why you can't. Repent for the sin of slander or gossip. So be careful what you say, whether it's at a convention or not, okay? But here's my take on this prayer. What I often call it is it's not a translation. It's a reflection on the text. So I usually introduce this by saying these words. What follows is difficult and challenging. We face our mortality. None of us want to, and all of us must, either now or someday. The prayer has an ominous tone about the new year, a sense of karma, of preordination, of resignation. It asks, who shall live and who shall die? Who by fire and who by water? Who by hunger and who by thirst? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who shall be at rest and who shall be restless? Who shall be poor and who shall be rich? Since we know not the number of our days as a complex human, before we become part of the earth and flow into other forms, it is better to live until we cannot, and better to ask these questions about ourselves and our year. Who will live like a fire that warms and welcomes others in from the cold? Who will live like water, giving and sharing life and love? Who will live with a hunger to bring sustenance to those who have none? Who will shake the foundations of a stale status quo and be an earthquake for freedom, so that those who are trapped within roles of unfulfillment and inequality might be released? Who shall live with creative restlessness, bringing rest to those who are weary, who may never have rested? Who shall live with a richness of spirit that will lift up those whose lives, souls, bodies, and minds are impoverished? So again, that's a different way to look at these, questions that turn the energy back towards ourselves, rather than waiting for an answer to these questions to come from outside of us. At the end of Rosh Hashanah, or as you may know that conservative Jews and Orthodox Jews celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Here's the reason. They also celebrate 2 holy days of Passover as well, 2 holy days of Shavuot as well, and 2 holy days of Sukkot as well, all the pilgrimage festivals. The reason is that people were supposed to get to the temple in Jerusalem at the right time, on the holy day. So in order to do that, before the age of GMT and Greenwich Mean Time and nuclear clocks, and that were all synchronized and so on and so forth, the new month was announced from the temple in Jerusalem with a huge bonfire. And that bonfire would be seen by a person stationed at another potential bonfire at a hill far away. When that person would see the initial bonfire, the next bonfire would be lit, and on it went, all the way out to the outskirts of Israel, as far north and south as it could go. And you know that Jerusalem is somewhat in the center of Israel. So what happened is that sometimes the message didn't get to the real outlands until the next day. And so in order to be sure that they celebrated holidays or holy days on the right day, they put 2 days in just to make sure that they didn't get, they get one anyway if one of them was wrong. So this happens at the end of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, or towards the end of the first day. Orthodox Jews and conservative Jews will be going back to the synagogue after this to go begin the next day of service. We, as Reform Jews, pretty much end our Rosh Hashanah with this. Tashlich is the sending away. The sending away of what? The sending away of the things that we did wrong. As if one can do that. One doesn't go to a therapist, in other words, to, dump things on the couch and leave them there. One goes to the therapist to work through those issues. However, what we want to do, we all want to, is to sometimes at least take the things we did wrong and just take them out of us, put them somewhere else, and think that we're fine and better, that we've somehow rid ourselves of them. This is obviously taking place somewhere back east because the weather's cooler. September 17th, it will probably still be warm enough to people in LA to be at the beach and in shirt sleeves. Some of our kids now come in bathing suits because they take advantage of being at the beach, which is one of those wonderful things about Tashlich here in California. But here's the other thing that occurs. The other thing that occurs is that we take little crumbs of bread or little tiny pieces of bread and we throw them in the water. After we do this initial ceremony and some prayers, we all take a handful of crumbs or pieces, really they're tiny pieces like this, and bring them to the ocean and throw them away. The great thing about doing it at the ocean versus a pond like this is that the ocean brings them right back to you. So you really know who's the responsible person here. It's not someone else that you really can't throw your wrongdoings away. You have to actively go through what happened and understand why it happened and be that better person. So, it's a matter of really changing behavior and changing attitude and changing perspective sometimes. And neither the geography of where your wrongdoing is, whether it's right in your pocket or you've thrown it away, doesn't make any difference. You really can't get rid of it. It's also a great day for the seagulls. They love Tashlich. But it's also a good time to take all the extra bread that we have there and give it to those who are clearly homeless, who are always around us. And it ends up being an incredibly powerful and beautiful ceremony, because after the song leading, and I'll do that just like this rabbi is, after that's done, everybody sort of spreads out and goes very silently and quietly to the ocean. And it's very solemn, because by the time you get to the ocean, you recognize that you really can't do this. This really doesn't have the effect you want it to. And you do it anyway to convince yourself once and for all, hopefully, that you have to go through another process. Now, therefore, if we do that, why do we go back every year? Because, as you've heard me say, Judaism doesn't trust people to be good or nice, right? Judaism believes that we all need a system and bumpers and signs around us to keep us in a framework, not that we're trapped and there's no freedom and so on and so forth, and there's no movement, but that we have guideposts all around us to help us stay in a good place. what we do with tashlich is we recognize, just like I noted before, you can get off the road. You can get to a place that you don't even recognize where you are. You can get to a place that is not a good place for you to be. And so you need to get back to that other place. And tashlich it's just another touchstone for Rosh Hashanah that helps us do that. Now, the shofar is the last thing that you'll hear on Rosh Hashanah, well, pretty close to the end of the services before we go to the beach. Sometimes the shofar is taken to the beach, to Tashlich, and is blown there as well. In fact, on the month of Elul, which we talked about at the very beginning, the shofar is blown at every service except Shabbat, because on Shabbat, you're not supposed to play musical instruments. So you need to know about the shofar a little bit. And if you've never seen one, here they are. These are really taken from a ram. We don't, well, they're not taken from the ram. They fall off naturally. And then the rams, regrow their horns. We take them and we shape them into instruments that can be blown. So you can sort of see it here in this picture. There is a roundness to this end that's given, that's carved by someone who's an expert at it. And this one just has a beautiful, beautiful change of texture and color. It's really quite gorgeous. These are really ones from like a ram, a big ram. These are obviously smaller. These will have a much, much deeper tone than these guys will. I mean, these are kind of squeaky. These are, trombone-ish in their, not only their tone, but what they do to you physically. There are 3 sets of notes, or 3 different sets of notes that we play on the shofar. The shofar, as you may know, was an instrument in the ancient world. In addition to being an instrument, it was an announcing tool, right? It would gather people together. It would call people to war. It could also be turned around and call people to peace, to end war. In early Israel, when before the nation was reestablished in 1948, people used to blow the shofar to announce the beginning of Shabbat, so that after the shofar was blown and just about everybody could hear it, they knew that it was too late to light candles, because it had already begun. The notes that are blown are a progression of notes that is really a musical rendition of someone crying. The first is 3 notes, da-da, 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 like someone, kind of sighing, going, ha, 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 and then someone really breaking down and crying, ha, 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 right? And then a loud, long blast. Now, maybe next week I'll remember and I'll bring a shofar. I'm not sure how well the shofar will translate over the internet. But we'll see. So it's a powerful sound. And the last one that you do is called a tekiah gdolah, which means a loud blast or a loud shout. And what it does to the player is amazing. And I think it does the same thing to everybody watching. And then you see how long people could do it, and everybody looks at their watch and times the person and so on and so forth. But what's happening is it's just soul stirring. And that's the idea of Rosh Hashanah. The idea of Rosh Hashanah is supposed to stir you up, get you uncomfortable. Or Jews are an uncomfortable people. We've always been uncomfortable, and we always are uncomfortable. We're always asking why things are the way they are, and why they can't be different and be better. But the shofar is a wonderful musical translation of that yearning and that feeling. And it brings people to tears. It really does. It is just so powerful. And that's really, that's the last slide of Rosh Hashanah for the evening. Yeah, so we're good. So let me stop the share and we can start some questions. Yeah.
Well, we have time for lots of questions, and we have time for a few before we have to turn off the record. So.
Oh, good. See, I tried to time it differently tonight, so that's good.
Well, Neil, it struck me that there are many, many similarities to Christianity. Why are we surprised, since Christianity came out of Judaism?
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's all about the rhythm of confession and forgiveness, it seems to be, in this holiday. I mean, and that's really, central to Christianity too. There's not a lot of difference, there in that sense. Would it be practiced as you described it in all the variety branches of Judaism similarly?
Oh yeah, I mean, pretty much so. There would just be, the services for Orthodox and conservative Judaism, would be longer. There are some things that we as Reform Jews think are repetitive or moot at this point in terms of their expression. And so, we have the liturgies reduced, but yeah, the core of it is all the same. Which is great, because again, it's that notion that you can go into a synagogue anywhere in the world, and if you have some knowledge of the service, then you're going to feel at home and you can know what's going on and basically where you are. So that's good. Although, like I said, I have a tendency to translate things on my own and try to expand the consciousness and to kind of even reverse the direction of the prayer, invert the direction of the prayer. Rather than going outward, that it turns toward me. In fact, the word for prayer in Hebrew, you heard it before, is tefillah. And it comes from an infinitive that is actually what's called a reflexive verb, meaning the action goes out and the action comes back. So that's what prayer is. The action goes out and turns around like a boomerang and comes right back at you.
Say that word again. Say that word again, Neil.
Reflexive?
Or, I want to know the word in Hebrew.
Well, the word for prayer is tefillah, T''F''I''. And the word for prayer, the word to pray, the infinitive is lehitpalel. And when you look up the root of that word in the Hebrew dictionary, the word is the p sound, or which gets softer in the word tefillah, right? The p becomes an f, and then the two L's in it, right? The lameds. So the P sound, the L sound, and the L sound, that's the root. Every Hebrew word has a 3-letter root. Some have 4, but they're really, really rare. So 3-letter root, you look it up in a Hebrew dictionary and it doesn't say to pray, it says to judge. So what prayer is within Judaism is self-judgment. Because it goes out and comes back, right? It's being as objective as one can with oneself, which is not completely possible, but there it is. And again, that is one of the themes of this time of the year. And like I said, it's Christmas and Easter, but in terms of grandeur, right, and importance within the cycle, but it's really, really serious, in that regard. Rosh Hashanah is much lighter, than on Rosh Hashanah we can eat, Yom Kippur, which we'll talk about next week, is a day of fasting. It's, 24 hours, 25 hours of fasting. So, and, it's much more intense. The intensity grows over these 10 days, beginning with Rosh Hashanah and ending with Yom Kippur. And it is, you can feel it. You can feel it happening. And again, it's not as if we wait for this time of the year to say, oh, gee, I've done something wrong. But in fact, by the time we get to Yom Kippur, which I'll reiterate next week, the Talmud says, that great compendium of Jewish law and commentary and understanding, says that a wrongdoing between you and God can be taken care of on Yom Kippur, but not between you and another person. That you have to do on your own. Okay, you can't be forgiven for something that you do to somebody else. You have to take care of that on your own. No one else, an outside entity can't do that. So that may be a difference. I'm not sure.
Neil, the service that you used to rent the auditorium at the high school for was Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
You'd rent 2 nights and bookend the week with that then.
Well, we'd rent 2 nights and 2 days.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay. So Rosh Hashanah, like every Jewish holiday and holy day, begins at night. The table is going to look very similar to Shabbat at home. You'll have 2 candles to inaugurate the day, to initiate the day, a cup of wine for a slightly different toast, as it were, to the day. And then a challah, except this challah is round, to indicate the cyclical nature of life, and that we've come round to another Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's usually a little bit sweeter and often has white raisins in it. Yum. Okay. And often served with honey to heighten the sweetness. It's also a time of year when we serve apples and honey, because apples too are round, right? And so we take, wedges of apples and honey and pass them around, and it's really quite beautiful. It's really quite wonderful. Although that doesn't happen in Israel because they don't have apples.
Right.
Right? Not there. But it's an Eastern European thing that got brought over. So
in a sense too, similar to Christmas and Easter, these are also big, what we would call stewardship days for the congregation. This is a day where you actually you don't call it dues, people actually get caught up on their giving to the synagogue at this time.
Yeah, we actually start that a couple of months before. Our fiscal year, at least for our synagogue, starts earlier in June. But many synagogues, will actually ask for people to stand up and say how much they're giving this year and so on and so forth. We don't do that. And most synagogues have gone away from that. It's a very old custom to sort of like, shame people into giving, which is horrible. But, we do depend on, versus, obviously we accept donations all year long, but we also operate on a dues system. Most synagogues do that. And I don't know synagogues that ask for a tithe at this point, not like the temple in Jerusalem, because first of all, that's reserved for the temple in Jerusalem, which doesn't exist anymore. And number 2, if we asked for a tithe, we wouldn't have any members because people just can't afford it. So it's not okay. And of course, we'll suggest a number, and then we'll talk to people and see how much is they can really afford, and that's wonderful. It's also a time, by the way, to begin to provide ways for people to do the last part of that series, assuming that we did the teshuvah, the turning, and the prayer in the synagogue, and then you go out. And what we've done is have tables in the lobby that says you can do this and you can do that and you can do that. these are acts of righteousness and justice that you can engage in right now. And we'll also give you a shopping bag to take home and fill it and bring it back on Yom Kippur, because you're not eating anyway that day, and we'll give it away. And we're good friends with the West Side Food Bank, who are great people. Bruce Rankin is one of my
So
favorite people.
we're coming to our hour, so you want to do a wrap, and then we can continue with some questions.
Okay. Let me begin let me end with how we began, which was Sidney Greenberg noting there's a world of difference between a holiday and a holy day. There's also a world of difference between wishing people a happy year versus wishing people a good year. That our goal is to be good. Our goal is to be upright. It's not saying that uncomfortable or difficult things won't happen, but our goal is to find the goodness therein, or make those difficult times better for ourselves and for everyone around us, and not to win the game of who's the happiest at the end.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Odavo shalom aleinu, Odavo shalom aleinu, Yavo shalom aleinu ve'al